Geopolitics and Empire is joined by Dr. Vladimir Kozin, who's a member of the Russian Academy of Military Sciences, vice president of the Russian National Institute for Global Security Research, winner of the Colonel General Varfolomei Korobushin Reward from the Russian Strategic Missile Forces, and a leading expert at the Center for Military Political Studies of the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. That's a mouthful. Welcome to Geopolitics and Empire, Dr. Kozin.
Well, thank you very much.
We met briefly in 2017 in Moscow when you spoke to our group, which toured Russia with Sharon Tennyson. I'm not a Russian agent. Us Americans were simply engaging in peace diplomacy because we were worried about what's happening now. We were worried about that happening. Do you recall those days speaking at Sharon Tennyson's events?
Well, unfortunately, when we met that time, you have already specified a long time ago, the situation was totally different. Ukraine attacked Donbass and killed a lot of civilians in that area, sometimes previously belonged to the Russian Federation before 1922. But the situation was not so dramatic and dangerous as it is nowadays. Because at that time, when you and your colleagues from Sharon's organization visited Moscow and talked to me, there was only one aggressor against Donbass, namely Ukraine. But currently we are confronted with a combination of aggressors, namely Ukraine plus NATO alliance. And unlike in the past, when aggressor was launched against two republics inside Donbass, currently it's a direct aggression of Ukraine plus NATO against not Donbass, but against the Russian Federation. I have to explain shortly this phenomena, because since last October, two republics in Donbass, namely Donetsk People's Republic and Lugansk People's Republic, plus Zaporozhye region or Oblast in Russian and Kherson region, they joined voluntarily the Russian Federation. And when we are talking to you, they are 100% accurate subjects of the Russian Federation since 2022, October. Mm-hmm. The Crimean Republic joined the Russian Federation in 2014. So that's the gist of the situation in that part of Europe. The second issue, when we met before in Moscow, there was not so dramatic situation with nuclear weapons and threats to use it. Threats to use it came not from the Russian Federation, because in all statements quoted by Western academic community or journalists, there was not a single word like nuclear weapons. There wasn't such a terminology, and why? I'm wondering why the Western community just interpreted Putin's words as a desire or wish to employ nuclear weapons against Ukraine and the rest of the world. But on the contrary, the desire of the USA and NATO to use nuclear weapons against the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus, our ally, have intensified, especially in the area called forward-based areas, where NATO, where eastern flank of NATO is located, namely in the Baltic Sea area and the Black Sea area, very close to our territory and the Republic of Belarus, and to the Russian exclave on the banks of the Baltic Sea. Unfortunately, negative stance that have been pursued by the United States of America in terms of arms control, conventional and nuclear, the situation has not improved. On the contrary, it worsened. And we are still confronted with 15 negative attitude to 15 arms control agreements signed on either on bilateral or on multilateral basis. And during the President Donald Trump tenure, he withdrew from 4 arms control agreements, and Joseph Biden has not returned or has not rewritten them or renewed them in some way. So the situation, as I said, is very dramatic, very dangerous, and the Eastern Bloc and Western Bloc approached to the Third World War very close.
Yep.
So that's the end of my bullet points, and I'm looking forward to hearing your questions.
A quick shout out to our sponsors, which you can locate via the sponsor page on geopoliticsandempire.com, or whose links are included in every podcast description. I've tried privacy phones in the past, such as Silent Circle's Black Phone, which turned out to be a dud. The best and really only option so far is de-Googling your phone. Now, you can do it yourself, but I've never had the time to figure that out and simply got an Above phone. They sell de-Googled phones that come with a suite of software. They also provide support and a monthly Above privacy suite with many features such as a unique phone number, encryption, email, VPN, and so forth. If you're looking for a private phone, check out Above Phone. Make sure to click on the Above Phone link on geopoliticsandempire.com or via the podcast description so that we can enjoy a commission. Also, check out the Nomos Time Bank at nomos.net, which you can download in Spanish or English to your Apple or Google or de-Googled phone. Nomos allows people in your community to exchange services using time as a currency rather than fiat money. This will be one great way to survive in the coming algorithm ghetto. If you need health insurance, you can talk to my friend James Guzman of the Borderless Blog Podcast and Health Insurance. He offers free consultations. Simply schedule a time with him over at borderlesshealthinsurance.com. Finally, you can donate directly to Geopolitics and Empire, consult with me, the host, or become a member to join private monthly member Zoom calls where we shoot the breeze discussing world events. Just as you mentioned, I recently had on a Western academic who said that he went through 50 plus of Putin's speeches, and he agrees with you. He said that Putin never used the threat of nuclear weapons. So we've got both West and East agreeing on that, academics. And maybe to further get your thoughts as to what is really going on with Ukraine, to me, it seems like a once in a century moment, a very serious moment that signals great power conflict, a stage of transition, even because we're dealing with serious economic issues in the West, as well as this desire by the West for global hegemony, domination. You've, in previous talks, you've called this Cold War 2.0, which is even deadlier. And you cite Putin, who said, the goal of U.S. and NATO is to deliver a strategic defeat of Russia. So, if you could go further, and what are we understand you laid out the Ukrainian assaults on Donbass, but if we go deeper, looking at the bigger historical context, what do you feel is really happening?
Well, currently, as I said, there is an all-out aggression of NATO alliance against the Russian Federation per se. We are also feeling direct threat from nuclear weapons stored nearby, and conventional weapons also moved very closely to our territory. We are also seeing that there is no major breakthrough in resolution of the outer space activity, despite the mere scientific research lab in outer space, and despite all these calamities and difficulties and attacks and armed deliveries, we're still cooperating in outer space with the United States of America and some other countries situated in the Persian Gulf area or in Japan, for example. The threat is very high because I haven't seen any improvement in Western position towards the Russian Federation. We have confronted with a huge amount of economic, financial, and individual sanctions, and nowadays only the United States of America will be able to send its armored vehicles, tanks, and multiple launch rocket systems and Patriot interceptor systems in 33rd time. So in the 33rd basket, as Washington puts it. There are no negotiations, there are no telephone exchanges like in the past, using hotlines and direct presidential telephone lines, no delegations. We have suspended, with the Russian Federation, suspended our participation in the New START without any glimpse of hope to resume our full-fledged participation. So the story is not so good. It's very bad. And you were right when you reminded me that the Cold War is not over. It acquired completely qualitatively new dimension called Cold War 2. Or 2.0, like the second version, the second type of Cold War. And I've heard that the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States Armed Forces, especially General Mark Milley, revealed that Americans are planning to continue this aggression against the Russian Federation in the heart of Europe, in Ukraine, for the next 5 years. And it is actually the war of attrition. And nobody except us was able to protect civilians in Donbass. And by the way, several figures updated from 2014, from April 2014, when interim president of Ukraine, Turchinov, signed a decree to launch an anti-terrorist operation against Donbass, but actually using regular armed forces of Ukraine against civilians in Donbass till February last year, when the current president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, started another stage of aggression exactly on 14 of February 2022. That's 10 days before we launched counterattack against Ukrainian aggression. So plus nearly 5,000 more civilians have been killed in Donbass only, and these two republics I mentioned. So totally 14,000 in the previous stage of aggression, plus nearly 5,000 in the current aggression. So it's more than 19,000 people killed in Donbass, and several dozens, thousands injured, wounded, etc. I'm not talking about huge destruction of social infrastructure, houses, schools, hospitals, water and gas supply systems, whatnot, everything. So there are no chances to continue political negotiations that started soon after we responded to the Ukrainian aggression at the end of February 2022, and it lasted till the end of March last year, interrupted, by the way, by the Kiev side. There are no chances to resume such negotiations because Kiev and Moscow, they have totally opposite view what could be the agenda of the next round of talks and what will be the preferred options for a political settlement of this story. So 180% degree, totally different. So that's it.
You mentioned terrorism. That was my next question, something you've been writing about as well, referring to Syria and what recently transpired with the destruction of Nord Stream, which Putin called state terrorism. And objectively, I would agree with him. We had Seymour Hersh come out. I had a guest on last year, a Vietnam veteran, who back in October, his thesis was that the blowing up of Nord Stream had the fingerprints of the CIA on it. And, we've seen political assassinations of individuals who have, of non-combatants like Darina Dugina. I understand that the FSB recently reported that they stopped another assassination attempt on the owner of the Orthodox TV channel Tsargrad TV. We had the Kerch Bridge incident in Crimea, and I know the Russians like to use the term provocations. I like to use the term false flag operations. And what is your assessment of these types of events that keep that the West keeps on carrying out? Nord Stream, this state terrorism or false flag operations in Syria, the staged chemical attacks that we saw. I know Lavrov and others like to use the word cynical. I think it's too soft, but what do you make of this strategy and the West continuing to apply this?
Mm-hmm. Well, as to the first portion of your question concerning the explosion in the Baltic Sea of the Nord Stream pipelines, we do not have any doubt that this blast was engineered and implemented by the United States of America, and with the help of Norwegian armed forces. I don't know what whether Denmark and or Sweden knew beforehand, but I have a personal suspicion that the Federal Republic of Germany knew about the pre-planned explosion of the Nord Stream pipelines, because I can recall the press conference conducted both by President Joseph Biden and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz exactly on the 7th of February 2022, that is before our special military operation. And it was a clear statement, especially from the US President, that he will be able to do that when he replied to a question of a lady news person. So a simple group of saboteurs or terrorists cannot do this job, and we do not believe stories that appeared on the 7th of March this year in the New York Times that allegedly pro-Ukrainian group was responsible for this underwater attack on a gas pipeline. No, it cannot be done by a group of 6 or 7 persons alone, because they won't be able to deliver a huge amount of high explosive and put it on the pipes, on the gas pipelines, exactly, you see, in the deep water, about roughly 90 or 100 meters deep in the Baltic Sea. It was specially invented story not only to cut off Russian gas supply to Europe via Germany, but the major plan was to attract Germany from the Russian side in terms of getting Russian natural gas to Germany and in some other countries on the European continent. And the Americans were a beneficiary in this story. They tripled or quadrupled the price for its liquefied gas to Europe, and also managed to urge Germany to supply more heavy weapons to the current Kiev regime. As to the Crimean bridge explosion, it was a clear-cut story. Ukrainian special services, special security service stood behind its terrorist attack on the bridge, and currently it's fully operational. So it's not a problem nowadays, but it was also arranged by Ukrainian side. Well, there are plenty of other terrorist attacks planned to be used, biological or bacteriological weapons, chemical weapons on Ukrainian territory, and more than 40 biolabs run jointly by the Pentagon and the Ukrainian armed forces. They have been planning to use biological or bacteriological combat agents against the Russian Federation, but we prevented this plan to be effective, to be launched. So chemical warfare agents are being dropped occasionally on the Russian troops deployment in this part of Europe that is very bad because chemical warfare convention and biological, bacteriological, and toxin weapons convention are prohibiting to use this kind of mass media weapons everywhere. But unfortunately, Washington and Kiev disregard the fact that they have signed these conventions both together. So we have not used either bacteriological or chemical warfare agents or nuclear agents or nuclear weapons in Ukraine or against the Western community. But we managed to overcome economic and financial sanctions. And despite the fact that we lost some amount of money from selling oil and coal and gas to European countries, we managed to divert supply routes of selling gas and oil, liquefied natural gas as well, plus coal to the countries located in the Asia-Pacific region, especially to India and the People's Republic of China. So the situation in Moscow is very good. Salaries and pensions, wages are being paid in time without any delays, and government is increasing the volume of income in terms of rubles, in terms of local currency. The exchange rate is not so tragic as Joseph Biden once predicted. It's today is $1 is being sold by the banks at the level of 75 rubles per $1 and about 80 rubles per €1. So yes, okay. Any question?
Yeah. You mentioned biological, and I wanted to just maybe take a turn towards that because related to COVID-19 as well, because back in January 2020, I was the first to interview the author of the Biological Weapons Act that was signed into law by George Bush in 1989, Dr. Francis Boyle. In fact, I was contacted this week by a German film company who wants to use an extract of that interview. And he posits that COVID is a biological weapon, and it's coming out more and more. This thesis from the West, from American experts and politicians, that COVID may have principally been a Pentagon project. DARPA, the Department of Defense, and I have listened to some Russian military experts claiming that this was, a Western agenda, this COVID biological project to lower the population and attempt to control parts of the world. Do you have any opinion on, that?
Yes. We still believe that this COVID-19, has been developed and specifically implanted in the People's Republic of China by the U.S. military delegation that visited China prior to this pandemic, the global pandemic, and spread it, and people were not familiar with this kind of thing, simply believing that it's a seasonal flu. We call it in Russian grip. Not grip like this, holding something, but there's influenza. It's a seasonal influenza with a running nose, running temperature, splitting head, etc., etc. Nothing terrible, but it was very dangerous because the viruses went deeper into the lungs, and it caused pneumonia, and people who have not been treated properly and in time just died very quickly in several days. I know from my personal context of the friends and colleagues that some people died very quickly because they think that they could simply lay in the bed, stay at home, consume normal medium pills, and they will recover very soon. But they lost the time because a special treatment was necessary. Currently, we managed to overcome this disease, and we developed a special vaccine to defeat the COVID viruses. And currently, there is a repetition of this COVID disease in the Russian Federation, but not at the highest level than it was, let's say, 1 year and a half, 2 years ago. 2 years ago. I was very much surprised that our vaccine I used by myself, I tested it several times by myself. It's a two-stage vaccine called Sputnik V. V means victory. Sputnik Victory. In Russian, it was called Sputnik V. I had several times vaccination procedures, and I never was affected. My family also was not affected. We were not affected by any type of coronavirus because, you know, there are several forms of it. The previous, the initial one, and then some forms of other types, etc., etc. So that's it, and I was very much surprised that the Russian developed vaccine was neglected in the West. We wanted to provide it at very cheap prices, in some cases free of charge, where the outbreak was severe, and helped many countries by sending them just on a grant in aid basis, free of charge. There are several other types of vaccines, and we are not afraid of any potential outbreak. But this is a very horrible planetary or global disease, and the world community should unite in combating this kind of disease rather than to separate and to refuse any potential vaccination.
And going back to what we were discussing, I've got another question when it comes to NATO and missile defense. And, you know, when it comes to Ukraine, I'm very well aware, the danger for Russia of NATO, Ukraine becoming a NATO member, and then the United States deploying into Ukraine nuclear missiles, missile defense, which can become offense and creates for Russia a de facto sort of first strike situation from Ukraine to Russia. But then we're now hearing that Sweden and Finland want to join NATO. So if Sweden and Finland become NATO members, and then U.S. deploys nuclear forces into, say, Finland and installs missile defense / offense there, what threat would that pose to Russia having, Finland in NATO?
Yes, it will be considered in the Kremlin, in Moscow in general terms, and in the country, in my country, in general terms, as a very serious and direct threat to our national defense and our national security. Because from mid 50s of last century, there is still on the European continent the US tactical nuclear weapons that sometimes, if loaded on heavy strategic bombers, can perform strategic missions rather than tactical nuclear missions. And in 4 countries of Europe, like Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and Italy, plus in the Asian part of Turkey, in Incirlik near Adana. So it's one type of danger. Second type of danger is a Baltic policing NATO Air Force operation conducted 24 hours day and night, and each day and night throughout each year. And there are dual capable aircraft that are participating in this kind of operation that are capable to carry conventional and nuclear weapons. For example, the newly emerged B-6112 gravitational bomb, nuclear bomb, having a maximum yield of 50 kiloton of TNT equivalent. And it's very close to us in the Baltic states, and we believe that the NATO countries and the United States of America have already agreed to deploy nuclear bombs of the B-61 family to the 3 Baltic republics plus Poland, and probably to the second version of the same kind of operation called the Balkans air policing operations involving Romania and Bulgaria. And plus, yes, there are possibilities that the US might employ tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine, because the talks to deliver F-16 to Ukrainian armed forces that are able to carry nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs, is very dangerous for us, because F-16 is a certified carrier of the US tactical nuclear weapons. It depends on the type of the aircraft in terms of letters, because F-16 is divided in several modifications, A, B, C, etc. If A, it's surely it's a nuclear capable aircraft. Plus, we cannot abstain from the fact that already the US heavy strategic bombers like B-52H already flew above Ukrainian territory and approached several years ago southern regions of the Russian Federation. I mean, near Rostov-na-Donu. And by the way, the same type of aircraft participated in US strategic drills in the sky of Lithuania, very close to the Kaliningrad exclave, Kaliningrad region, 60 kilometers from the Neman River, separating Kaliningrad region from Lithuania. And they fired missiles and dropped bombs, naturally dummy bombs, not stuffed with nuclear charges, it's kind of for educational, for training purposes. But nevertheless, it's also a dangerous situation. And unfortunately, all these kind of negative stories I have just enumerated to you, we have tabled at the end of December, in the middle of December of 2021 to NATO and separately to the United States of America with certain draft agreements to be signed, guaranteeing security for all of us, Russia and the Western alliance. But unfortunately, in next January 22, we received from each of these sources, from Brussels, from Washington, a negative response. So I think you do not understand why we cannot live in peace and tranquility like a normal human beings. Why America is threatening us? Does it envy that we have a huge economic potential, huge territory, water resources, gas, oil, etc., etc.? So, but it doesn't matter. We can just sell it, buy something else from Western countries, from NATO. Like in the past, actually, the former Soviet Union, and later on the Russian Federation, we helped Europe to become very strong economically because we sold natural gas and oil and coal and wood, etc., and grain at very cheap prices. And I'm very much surprised that we sold our natural resources at a very cheap prices. So we just made a very grave mistake that we have done so.
Yeah, and I just feel the U.S. I mean, it's been mentioned in previous interviews with you. We can read the white papers from the Rand Corporation, the Wolfowitz Doctrine, the Project for a New American Century. Halford Mackinder a century ago, keeping Germany and Russia from coming together, and basically. In the recent months, we've seen the major Western papers like Atlantic and others talking about decolonizing Russia, balkanizing Russia, breaking it up. Putin, in speeches going back many years, says the West's goal is to defang and declaw the Russian bear. I mean, would you agree that that's their goal? I mean, I feel like they want full spectrum dominance. They want to take over the planet. No.
Yes, we have been considered as enemy number one from the year dot in the eyes and in the minds of many VIP politicians in the Western community. And all military and economic and financial schemes have been developed, first of all, to disintegrate the Russian Federation, like we ourselves disintegrated the former Soviet Union. Second, to arrange a regime change and replace the current Russian president and commander-in-chief by some other person, always bowing to the West, always agreeing on the special rules invented in NATO countries. But the recent public opinion poll conducted in my country shows that President Putin has more than 80% of popularity, positive remarks from rank and file citizens of my country. That's a very good, very formidable figure. And it says that he is very popular, even that we have been pushed to forestall the armed aggression from Ukraine and NATO against Donbass initially and later on against us totally. But we will manage to overcome this kind of difficulties because we have a lot of aggressors in our history. They sometimes captured even huge vast territory of the Russian Empire, of the Russian land in the ancient times and medieval ages and later on very close to our contemporary history. But we always won. We always won. And aggressor has been punished in all cases. And with each such outside aggression, we came out much stronger than we had been before such aggression. And I don't understand why many Western leaders neglect the lessons of history. History shows that we will win, even in this current combined Ukraine-NATO aggression against the Russian Federation and its people. We will win sooner or later. I don't know when we get this victory, but nevertheless, even recently, both President and Vladimir Putin and Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, they have outlined that major three goals outlined in the famous Putin's address to the nation early in the morning of 24th of February 2022, to denazify Ukraine, to demilitarize Ukraine, and to maintain national security and national defense of the Russian Federation. These three strategic goals are ironclad for ourselves. And we will be able to do that. Certainly, it will take some time. It's not an easy job. As I said, 33rd basket of military hardware delivery to Kiev. It prevents us to be very quick, because without US and NATO and non-NATO countries' military assistance to Ukraine, we could have been able to finish this aggression very quickly, because people in Donbass are on our side, plus two southern regions, Zaporozhye region and Kherson region, North Crimean as well, definitely. The referenda that took place in these 5 new territories showed that the huge majority of the people in these republics or just regions are in favor of joining the Russian Federation, and we accepted that. They are pure Russians. It was a very normal exit or normal behavior for Zelensky, for NATO, for the United States of America. The way out in the following way: not to let Ukrainian aggression against Donbass and the Russian Federation, but to start normal behavior of Ukraine with Ukrainian citizens in Donbass. Not blocking, not banning the use of Russian language, the national language, not prohibiting to profess Christian Orthodox religion, not to ban normal local culture, etc., help them economically, financially, but instead Zelensky have chosen quite an awkward path, leading his country into a deep canyon, a deep abyss.
Mhm. Yeah, I often, as you mentioned, I often do refer to history. Napoleon failed, Hitler failed,
Yeah.
and
First, First World War also, Kaiser we lost a little bit, but later on we regained our territory. So there are plenty of big examples and much deeper into history when Tatar and Mongols just intruded into the ancient Russia and even burned Kiev and destroyed Kiev, the capital of Kievskaya Rus, that time, a long time ago. But nevertheless, we managed to concentrate our efforts, our people, and to deliver a decisive blow to any aggressor. And that will be the fate of the current Ukrainian regime. Yes, go ahead, please.
One other concern I had that's interesting for me now is, apart from what we talked about, the nuclear aspect and these things, the use of color revolutions. And so I wrote my graduate thesis on this in the Geneva School of Diplomacy. And we've seen how this other weapon that the West has deployed, the 2003 Georgia Rose Revolution, it seems like they're trying to do another color revolution in Georgia as we speak.
Right.
Last year, I used to live in Kazakhstan. I was employed by Nazarbayev, and I actually, on the ground, I came into contact with these color revolutionary forces. My Kazakh students were participating with NGOs financed by National Endowment and Open Society and USAID, and actually told the Kazakh government. I had the Kazakh Secret Service speak with me about this, and I was, as an American, trying to warn Kazakhstan that I don't think I don't approve of my government overthrowing foreign governments, and so I was concerned for the sovereignty of Kazakhstan. And so we saw they try in Kazakhstan last year, Pakistan, they even tried to assassinate Imran Khan, Georgia again now, on and on. Do you have any comment on this tactic, this strategy of color revolution?
Yes, the color revolution strategy in many cases turned to be very fruitful and very positive for its masterminded people, for the engineers of this kind of color revolution, especially by using NGOs in every strata of society, in every professional circles, and widely supported and supplied with the US dollars and other currencies. In Ukraine, for example, why opposition just got the power in 2014, simply because the United States, like USAID and some other agencies, official agencies, helped to flourish of 400 different Ukrainian NGOs who were hostile to the current regime at that time, and they just took the power very, very easily. Something like 100 persons perished during the Maidan resistance in February 2014, or early in December 2013 as well. So it was very easy, just a method of taking power by the opposition groups in many countries. And you mentioned Kazakhstan. Yes, it is the same story. The same story, because while these NGOs and various centers, clubs, discussion community, whatnot, you can penetrate into the society and persuade that they could live in a better world. If they change the government, they will have a paradise and have yachts, football fields, and palaces everywhere they so desire. So they have been cheated. But the thing is that all this color revolution were aimed to reach one aim, to make the leadership and the country where the color revolution have been arranged to be pro-Western, to be anti-Russian, to be anti-everything with professing normal human behavior, human contacts, and free trade, real free trade, but not trade with the help of sanctions, the cap prices introduced or imposed by ill-wishing personalities.
A question, because you mentioned normal, and one of my final questions to get your thoughts on the West. I've been worried for 20 years as an American, also as a Croatian, now also a Mexican, but the decline of the West, the decline of U.S. empire, but we're seeing it economically deteriorate. We're seeing the rise of authoritarianism in this country that portends to be free and democratic. My own American government is shutting off my financial accounts just for having conversations like this, not doing anything illegal or violent. It's happening in Europe. Alina Lipp, German citizen, had even her parents' bank accounts were shut off by Brussels and Berlin. This is not democracy. This is totalitarianism, and culturally as well. Putin, Russians, and many other. I've been talking about this for 20 years. We see this. I think Putin called it this Satanism. It's openly being celebrated now at these Hollywood Film Awards. Recently, you had open displays of Satanism in the entertainment industry. Next month in America, they're going to have the biggest Satan. It's literally called Satan Conference, and so it's so in our face. What opinion do you have of this the decline of U.S. empire, but also this spiritual, strangeness that's going on?
Well, I hate any spiritual wars because the Lord, the God, created all of us as equals, as human beings on a very small planet called Earth. And we have to understand the simple truth that we can benefit, all of us. It doesn't matter in what country we live or just in what countries we are traveling. We have to be we have to live in peace, not saber rattling manner, or just intimidating, or just changing the governments in some other countries. Only while this pattern and through increasing the bonds in the traditional families, via traditional families, that is a normal behavior. In our constitution, we recognize, for example, the family affairs, official family affairs between he and her as the union between a gentleman and a lady. Only they can produce kids, etc., etc. That's also a sacred gift of the Lord, and we cannot invent something else. It would be against Mother Nature, against the wisdom that the Almighty God advised all of us via prophets, via His prophets, that do everything that is in favor of your brothers and sisters. Do not create wars. Only sacred wars are permitted. But selfish wars, aggressions, for the sake of killing civilians, by using regular armed forces in any country is a great sin, and should be punished and condemned in every corner of the world. If people will understand this, I mean, all countries, we are having nearly 200 different countries, states, nations. If we understand this, I mean, we will live very good life, we ourselves and succeeding generations as well. But if we continue to intimidate people, to supply arms to warmongers, we will suffer, all of us, because there is a risk that there will be no winners and no losers, because everybody will die, especially if nuclear weapons are used in all-out nuclear war, in Armageddon, in a nuclear holocaust. So that's the noble task, not to this thing, this story to happen, to implement. That's why the outcome, for example, to this Ukrainian NATO aggression, the remedy, the cure all is very simple. The Western community should stop supplying arms to Ukraine and should persuade Zelensky to accept that 5 territories in Ukraine became a part and parcel of its mother Russia. They belong to Russia historically, culturally, religiously, and linguistically. He should recognize them. And do some other positive things, like paying compensation to those nearly 20,000 civilians killed in Donbass and in other areas. I'm not talking about GIs, military servicemen of the Russian Federation and Ukrainians. It's a different story. But nevertheless, if the war continues, we will move with each inch or centimeter or meter very close to the Third World War. Unlucky scenario. Unacceptable by any reasonable, rational personality.
Just one more question then. Do you feel the future is multipolar? There's a lot of talk about this. Do you feel the general trend? If we don't go into nuclear war, do you feel like we're moving into a multipolar system?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the multipolar, it's the only way we have to follow. Unipolar world or one polar world is not a proper path for the future, because unipolar world would be, I can imagine, if we can speak only English and we were just believing in one God. We will have the same culture with the same taste of food, etc., etc., etc. But if we have been created by the Lord in such a way we are existing, that means that we should be internationalists and to treat the opposite number in dignity, with respect, with honor, to be internationalists. That's the only way out. And if we are having still nearly 200 states, countries, we should live together like good neighbors. Like good neighbors in my multi-story house in Moscow.
That's a great final thought.
There is no other option. There is no other option. I like to travel to the United States when we had nice chats with the rank and file people, and even with the military. Soon after when the Soviet Union disintegrated, and we had, so to say, a rose garden period in our relationship with NATO countries and NATO military men. I visited military centers in the United States and military bases. Just moved by British destroyer from one part of the Atlantic to the other one, then visited Montpelier SSN, US Navy, right, and landed on the Carl Vinson nuclear power aircraft carrier in the Pacific during sorties trial. Lift off and land on using arresting gears and steam catapult. Yeah, it was a fantastic period of time. And we have managed to sign a lot of arms control agreements during that time. Though the Cold War was not officially over. Wasn't officially over between East and West. So, the Russian Federation is not guilty for what had happened in the year 22 and in the year 2023.
I hope you enjoyed this Geopolitics and Empire podcast. The website is geopoliticsandempire.com, and I encourage you to sign up for the free email list that goes out with each podcast and every weekend with a collection of news headlines. The newsletter and website are our last lines of defense. We're being censored and deplatformed. It's nearly impossible to find Geopolitics and Empire on the Google search engine. We've been blacklisted. YouTube frequently takes down our videos with strikes. Facebook restricts our page. Reddit and Twitter take down posts. And after the Associated Press mentioned Geopolitics and Empire in a 2021 article co-written with NATO, our Patreon account was terminated. Vimeo also terminated our Pro account. The best free way to help Geopolitics and Empire is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or elsewhere and subscribe to all of our media channels. You can find the video broadcast now on 5 platforms: Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon. You can find the audio broadcast on the podcast ecosystem: SoundCloud, Apple, Spotify, and so on. My current favorite social media channels are Twitter and Telegram, but you can also find us on Gab, MeWe, Minds, Float, VK, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Finally, Geopolitics and Empire is in dire need of funding to continue. You can leave a donation, purchase a consultation with the host, or become a member to receive additional benefits. We also produce a weekly broadcast called Dissident Thinker for members and Rockfin subscribers only. We will continue to fight the good fight come hell or high water. Thank you for listening.